The day my brother was buried, the sky felt too bright for grief. People always imagine funerals wrapped in rain and thunder, as if the world itself understands loss. But that morning, the sun was sharp and relentless, casting long shadows across the cemetery like nothing had happened. Like Daniel, my older brother, my protector, my only real family, hadn't just been lowered into the ground. I stood there in a black dress that didn't feel like mine, my fingers gripping each other so tightly they'd gone numb. I kept staring at the casket as if I could force it open with sheer will. As if he'd sit up, annoyed, telling everyone to stop being dramatic. But he didn't. And he wouldn't. "Are you okay, Mia?" someone asked behind me. I didn't turn. I didn't answer. Because the truth was simple, I wasn't. And I wouldn't be again. Daniel was 45. Too young. Too alive. Too needed. And now he was gone. A few steps away stood Clara, his wife. Perfect posture. Perfect black dress. Perfect grief. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, but I noticed something no one else seemed to. Her tears never actually fell. Her mascara never smudged. Her breathing never broke. It was a performance. And maybe I wouldn't have noticed before. Maybe I would have been too wrapped up in my own sorrow. But grief sharpens certain instincts. And something about her felt wrong. The priest's voice blurred into background noise as the ceremony dragged on. Words about peace, about rest, about eternity. Empty words that meant nothing when your world had just been ripped apart. I stepped forward when it was time, placing a white lily on Daniel's casket. My hand lingered there longer than it should have. "I'm still here," I whispered under my breath. "You don't get to leave me alone like this." No answer. Only silence. As I stepped back, the crowd began to shift. People murmured condolences, some squeezing my shoulder, others avoiding eye contact altogether. That's when I heard it. Clara's voice. Low. Sharp. Different. She wasn't crying anymore. She was laughing. Softly but unmistakably. I froze. "You really think she suspects anything?" another woman asked. I didn't recognize the voice. Clara scoffed. "Mia? Please." "She's too emotional to think clearly. Once the paperwork is done, everything will be mine anyway." My heart skipped. "Everything? And the house?" the woman asked. Clara's voice dropped even lower, but I heard every word. "She won't last long without him. People like her don't survive loss. Give it a few months, she'll break." My breath caught. Then came the words that lodged themselves deep into my chest. "And when she does," Clara added calmly, "I'll make sure she regrets ever being part of his life." I didn't move. I couldn't. It felt like the ground beneath me had shifted, like something invisible had snapped. For years, I'd convinced myself Clara just didn't like me, that it was normal, that not all in-laws got along. But this was something else. This was hatred. Calculated. Patient. Waiting. I turned slowly, just enough to see her from the corner of my eye. Her face had already changed back, soft, grieving, composed. Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just promised my downfall. The rest of the day passed in fragments. Voices. Faces. Hands touching my shoulder. Words I didn't remember. By the time I got home, the silence hit me harder than the funeral ever could. Daniel used to call every evening, even if it was just for 2 minutes. "Still alive," he'd joke. "Barely," I'd reply. "That was our thing." And now, nothing. I sat on my couch, staring at my phone like it might ring if I waited long enough. It didn't. Hours passed. Then night. Sleep never came. Only Clara's voice echoed in my mind. "She won't last long." The will reading was scheduled for 2 weeks later. 14 days of silence. 14 days of unanswered questions. 14 days of trying to convince myself I'd misunderstood. But I hadn't. I knew what I heard. And I knew something was wrong. Very wrong. Daniel wasn't careless. He was methodical, thoughtful, protective, especially when it came to me. So, why did Clara sound so confident? Why did she act like everything was already hers? Unless she believed it was. The morning of the will reading, I woke up before sunrise. I didn't bother with makeup. Didn't bother pretending. I just put on a simple dark outfit and tied my hair back. I looked older than I remembered. Grief does that. It ages you overnight. The lawyer's office was quiet when I arrived. Too quiet. Clara was already there. Of course she was. She sat with her legs crossed, scrolling through her phone like she was waiting for a business meeting, not her husband's final wishes. When she saw me, she smiled. Not kindly, not warmly, just knowingly. "Mia," she said smoothly. "You look exhausted." "I am," I replied. Her smile widened slightly. "Grief does that," she said. There was something underneath her tone. Something almost amused. I took my seat across from her. Didn't speak. Didn't look away. For the first time, I wasn't intimidated. I was watching. And she knew it. The lawyer entered moments later, carrying a folder thicker than I expected. "Thank you both for coming," he said, sitting down. Clara leaned forward immediately. "Let's begin," she said, barely hiding her impatience. I felt my pulse quicken. Something was about to happen. I didn't know what, but I could feel it. And for the first time since Daniel died, I wasn't just grieving. I was preparing. The air in the room felt heavier the moment the lawyer opened the folder, like something unseen had settled between us, pressing down on my chest and making each breath just a little harder than the last. Clara leaned forward, her fingers lightly tapping against the polished surface of the table, a small, impatient rhythm that betrayed more than her composed expression ever would. I noticed everything now. The way her eyes flicked to the documents, the way her lips tightened ever so slightly when the lawyer didn't immediately begin speaking, the way she avoided looking at me for more than a second at a time. 2 weeks ago, I might have missed all of it. 2 weeks ago, I would have been too busy trying to be polite, to keep the peace, to convince myself that whatever tension existed between us was normal. But now, after what I had heard at the cemetery, I wasn't that person anymore. "Mia, Clara," the lawyer began, folding his hands together. "Your brother left very specific instructions regarding how this process should be handled." His voice was calm, practiced, but there was something underneath it, something almost cautious. Clara exhaled sharply, like she was already bored. "I'm sure it's all very straightforward," she said. "Daniel wasn't the type to complicate things." I almost laughed at that, but I bit it back. She had no idea. Or maybe she did, and that's why she sounded so confident. Either way, I stayed silent, my hands resting in my lap, my fingers finally still. "There is," the lawyer continued, "an audio recording your brother requested to be played before the will is formally read." That got her attention. Clara's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing slightly. "A recording?" she repeated. "Why?" The lawyer didn't answer her question directly. Instead, he reached for a small device on his desk and pressed a button. For a split second, there was nothing but static. And then, "Mia, if you're hearing this," my entire body froze. Daniel's voice. It wasn't just similar. It wasn't just familiar. It was him. Clear. Steady. Real. Every muscle in my body tightened at once, like I had been thrown back in time, like the past 2 weeks had never happened. My throat closed up so quickly it hurt, and suddenly I couldn't breathe properly. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear his voice until that exact moment, and now that I had, it felt like losing him all over again. "I don't know how to start this," his voice continued, softer now. "So, I'll just say what matters. If this is being played, it means I didn't get the time I thought I had. Clara shifted in her seat. I saw it clearly, the flicker of discomfort, the way her jaw tightened. To my sister, he said, and my eyes burned instantly. Mia,
I'm sorry.
for everything I didn't say while I still could, for the times I told you not to worry, for the times I made you feel like you were overreacting. A tear slid down my cheek before I could stop it. You weren't, he added quietly. The words hit harder than anything else, because I knew exactly what he meant. Across the table, Clara's tapping had stopped completely. I saw more than you think, Daniel continued, his tone shifting, becoming firmer, more deliberate. And I waited too long to act on it. Clara straightened. What is this? She muttered under her breath, but no one answered her. For the past year, his voice went on, I've been documenting certain things. Conversations, transactions, behavior. Now the silence in the room felt different. Sharp,
Tense.
dangerous. I didn't want to believe it at first, he said, but I couldn't ignore what I was seeing. Clara let out a small, disbelieving laugh. This is ridiculous, she said, louder now. Daniel would never. The lawyer raised a hand. Please, he said calmly, but Daniel's voice didn't pause. And Clara, he said. Her name landed like a stone in still water. Everything stilled. I know about Jason. The effect was immediate. Clara went completely still, not shocked in the way people pretend to be, not confused, just caught. You told him I was weak, Daniel continued, his voice steady in a way that made it even more painful to hear. That I wouldn't question anything. That once I was gone, everything would fall into place. My stomach dropped. The exact words from the cemetery echoed in my mind. Everything will be mine. Clara stood up abruptly. Turn that off, she snapped. This is fabricated. This is. It is not fabricated, the lawyer said evenly. Please sit down. She didn't move. I have copies, Daniel's voice went on, as if he knew this moment would happen. Messages. Financial records. Footage from the house cameras installed last year. Now, even I felt the shift. This wasn't just suspicion. This was proof. Clara's face had lost all color. I wanted to confront you, he said, quieter now, but I realized something. Confrontation wouldn't change who you are. That was the moment she sat down again. Slowly, carefully, like her legs weren't entirely steady. So, I made a different choice, Daniel continued. One that protects the people I love. My hands trembled slightly in my lap. I didn't know what was coming next, but I knew it would change everything. The house, he said, goes to Mia. Clara inhaled sharply. The accounts under my personal name, also Mia. Her eyes snapped toward me, filled with something raw and ugly. The remaining assets, Daniel added, will be distributed according to the documents held by my attorney. Clara.
He paused.
Just for a second. And in that second, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. You will receive the amount specified in the prenuptial agreement under breach conditions. Silence. Absolute silence. Then, that's insane, Clara whispered. But there was no anger in it. Not yet. Just disbelief. The recording ended with a soft click. And for a long moment, no one spoke. I sat there, unable to move, unable to fully process what I had just heard. My brother, my careful, quiet, endlessly patient brother, had seen everything. Not just seen it, understood it, planned for it, protected me from it. Across from me, Clara looked like someone who had just had the ground pulled out from beneath her. Her confidence was gone. Her certainty gone. In its place was something far more dangerous. Desperation. Mia, she said suddenly, her voice softer now, almost pleading, you don't actually believe this, do you? I looked at her. really looked, and for the first time, I didn't see someone stronger than me. I saw someone exposed. I believe him, I said quietly. Her expression cracked. Just slightly, but enough. This isn't over, she said, her voice dropping, something cold slipping back in. You have no idea what you're getting into. Maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't. But as I sat there, with Daniel's voice still echoing in my head, I realized something had shifted. I wasn't alone anymore. Not really, because even now, he was still protecting me. The silence after the recording didn't just sit in the room. It pressed in from all sides, thick and suffocating, like something alive that had been waiting for this exact moment to reveal itself. No one rushed to speak. Even the lawyer, who had likely seen his share of tenseful readings, seemed to understand that whatever had just happened couldn't be smoothed over with formal words. I sat completely still, my mind replaying Daniel's voice over and over, each sentence carving itself deeper into me. He knew, not just suspected, knew. And all this time, I had doubted myself, questioned my instincts, convinced myself I was imagining things just to keep peace in a family that clearly had none. Clara, however, recovered faster than I expected. That alone told me everything I needed to know about her. Shock didn't last long with people like her. It simply transformed into strategy. She leaned back in her chair slowly, crossing her legs again, forcing her breathing into something controlled, something deliberate. When she spoke again, her voice was different, quieter, but sharper, like a blade wrapped in silk. "We both know this isn't going to hold up," she said, directing her gaze at the lawyer, not me.
People say things when they're sick.
When they're scared, that doesn't make them legally sound. The lawyer didn't flinch. "The recording is supplemental," he replied calmly. "The will itself was revised 8 months ago, witnessed and notarized. Your husband was of sound mind at the time. 8 months. Before everything got worse. Before the hospital.
Before the end."
Clara's jaw tightened. She hadn't expected that. I felt it then, not satisfaction, not yet, but a small, steady shift inside me. Something grounding. Something stabilizing. For the first time since Daniel died, I wasn't completely at the mercy of everything happening around me. There was structure now.
Truth.
Evidence. And most importantly, his intention. "That doesn't change anything," she said, though her tone had lost some of its edge. "I was his wife. I have rights." "You do," the lawyer agreed. "Which is why the prenuptial agreement applies." That word again. Agreement. Not love. Not partnership. Terms. Conditions. Clara stood abruptly this time, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is unbelievable," she snapped. "You think you can just take everything and I'll walk away quietly?" Her eyes landed on me again, and this time there was no pretense left.
No mask.
Just raw hostility. I didn't look away. "Daniel made his choices," I said. The moment the words left my mouth, I realized something. I wasn't shaking. Not anymore. For a second, that seemed to throw her off more than anything else. "You really think he trusted you more than me?" she said, her voice rising. "You? You were barely even in his life these last few years." That hit. Of course it did. Because it was true. Or at least, it had felt true. And for a brief moment, doubt flickered again. But then Daniel's voice came back. "You weren't imagining it." I inhaled slowly. "He tried to see me," I said. "You made sure that didn't happen." Her expression shifted. Fast, but not fast enough.
Caught.
Again. "Don't twist things," she said, but there was less conviction now. "I'm not," I replied. The room went quiet again, but this time it felt different. Less like suffocation, more like space opening up, space for things to be said that had been buried for years. The lawyer cleared his throat slightly, bringing the focus back. We can proceed with the formal reading, or we can pause here and reconvene. No, Clara said immediately. Finish it. Of course she did. She still thought there was something left to salvage. Something hidden. Something she could still claim. The lawyer nodded and began going through the documents, outlining everything in precise, measured language. Property, accounts, investments, allocations. It was all laid out clearly, methodically, exactly how Daniel would have done it.
No gaps. No confusión.
No room for interpretation. And with every sentence, Clara's composure chipped away further. Not dramatically, not loudly, but visibly. Her fingers curled tighter around the edge of the table. Her posture stiffened. Her breathing became more shallow, more controlled in that unnatural way people use when they're trying not to explode. By the time the lawyer finished, the outcome was undeniable. She had lost, not just financially, but completely. This isn't over, she said again, but this time it sounded different. Less like a threat, more like something she was trying to convince herself of. She grabbed her bag, her movements sharp and abrupt, and headed for the door. But just before leaving, she paused, turned, and looked directly at me. You think this makes you safe? She said quietly. The room stilled again. You have no idea what I'm capable of. Then she left. The door shut behind her with a force that echoed longer than it should have. I didn't move for a few seconds, didn't speak, didn't react. But inside, something had changed again, because for the first time, I believed her. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. Instead, I drove. No destination, no plan, just movement. The city blurred around me, buildings passing without meaning, traffic lights shifting colors I barely registered. My hand stayed steady on the wheel, but my mind was racing in too many directions at once. Daniel knew. Clara was exposed. And somehow, that didn't feel like the end. It felt like the beginning of something else. Something unfinished. Something dangerous. By the time I finally stopped, I hadn't even realized where I was until I looked up. His house. I hadn't been there in months. Not since things started getting worse. Not since Clara made it very clear my presence wasn't welcome.
But now
it was different. Now it was mine. The thought didn't feel real. Not yet. I sat in the car for a full minute, staring at the familiar structure, the clean lines Daniel had designed himself, the windows that used to glow warmly when he was home. Then I stepped out. The air felt different here. Quieter.
Still.
As if the house itself was holding its breath. The key the lawyer had given me felt heavier than it should have. I hesitated at the door. Just for a second. Then I unlocked it. The click echoed, and I stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not dust. Not neglect. But something disturbed, like the air had been moved recently. My eyes adjusted slowly as I walked further in. Everything looked almost the same. Almost. But not quite. A drawer in the hallway slightly open. A picture frame on the wall tilted just enough to be noticeable. A chair not aligned with the table the way Daniel always kept it. Small things. But intentional. Careless.
Wrong.
A cold realization settled in my chest. She had been here. After the reading. After everything. I moved quickly now, my steps echoing louder against the floor as I checked room after room. Living room. Nothing obvious missing. Kitchen, untouched. Bedroom. I stopped in the doorway. The closet doors were open. Half empty. Jewelry gone. Clothes gone. But that wasn't what made my stomach drop. It was the office. The door was slightly ajar. And inside. Chaos. Drawers pulled out. Papers scattered. The safe. Open. Empty. My breath caught. She hadn't just come to collect her things. She had been searching for something specific, something important, and judging by the state of the room, she hadn't found it. A chill ran down my spine, because if Clara was desperate enough to come back here after losing everything, then whatever she was looking for, it mattered. A lot. My phone buzzed suddenly in my hand, making me flinch. Unknown number. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but something told me not to. I opened the message. 3 words. That was all. You missed something. I stared at the screen, my pulse spiking instantly. Then another message came. I'm not done yet. I looked up slowly, my eyes scanning the room again. The open drawers, the empty safe, the scattered papers. And suddenly, the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt watched. I didn't leave the house. Not right away. Even though every instinct in my body was telling me to get out, to put distance between myself and whatever invisible threat Clara had just made very real, I stayed exactly where I was, in Daniel's office, surrounded by the mess she had left behind. My phone was still in my hand, the screen dimming and lighting up again as if it were breathing. Those 2 messages burned into my mind. You missed something. I'm not done yet. It wasn't just a threat. It was a clue. And the more I stood there, the more I understood that if I walked away now, I would be playing directly into whatever game she thought she was controlling. So instead of running, I locked the front door. Then I went back into the office. The air felt different now, heavier, sharper, like every object in the room had suddenly become part of a puzzle I didn't yet understand. Papers were scattered across the floor, some crumpled, some ripped slightly at the edges as if she had gone through them too quickly, too carelessly. Drawers hung open at uneven angles. The chair had been pushed back so hard it nearly touched the wall. This wasn't just searching. This was desperation. Clara hadn't come here calmly. She hadn't taken her time. She had panicked. And that meant one thing: whatever she was looking for, she believed it was here. Somewhere. I stepped further into the room, forcing myself to slow down, to look carefully instead of reacting. Daniel had always been organized. Not just tidy, methodical. Everything had a place, a system, a reason. If something had been important to him, he wouldn't have left it out in the open, which meant it wasn't in the obvious places. I crouched down, picking up a stack of papers from the floor. Financial documents, mostly. Statements. Reports. Some highlighted, some marked with small notes in his handwriting. My chest tightened slightly at the sight of it. Familiar, precise, unmistakably his. He had been building something, documenting, preparing, just like in the recording. I set the papers aside carefully and moved to the desk itself. The surface looked clean at first glance, but the longer I stared, the more I noticed small disruptions. A faint outline where something used to sit, a pen holder slightly off-center, a scratch near the edge that I didn't remember. And then, the laptop. It was still there, closed, untouched. Or at least it looked untouched. That alone didn't make sense. If Clara had torn through everything else, why leave the laptop behind? Unless she couldn't access it. I reached for it slowly, my fingers brushing against the cool metal surface before lifting the lid. The screen lit up instantly, asking for a password. Of course. Daniel never used anything simple. I hesitated, then tried the first thing that came to mind. Nothing. Second attempt. Nothing. A third.
Locked.
I exhaled quietly, forcing myself not to rush. This wasn't random. Daniel wouldn't have made it random. If he wanted someone to access this, if he wanted me to access it, then the answer was something I would know. Something personal. Something only I would understand. I closed my eyes for a second, thinking. Not dates. Not numbers. Something else. something older, something before everything became complicated. And then it hit me. Our childhood dog. The one no one else ever remembered but us. I opened my eyes and typed it in. The screen flickered, then unlocked. A sharp breath escaped me before I could stop it. He had known. Of course he had. My hands moved faster now, navigating through the folders, scanning names, dates, files. Everything was organized into categories: business, personal, legal, but one folder stood out immediately. It wasn't labeled clearly. Just a single word. Archive. My pulse quickened as I clicked it. Inside. Videos. Documents. Images.
Dozens of them.
All time-stamped. All structured. All intentional. My throat tightened as I opened the first file. Security footage. The living room.
Night.
Clara. And a man I had never seen before. They were laughing. Relaxed. Comfortable. Too comfortable. Just a few more months, she was saying, swirling a glass in her hand. Once everything is transferred, we won't have to worry about anything. The man smiled. And your sister-in-law? Clara rolled her eyes. She's irrelevant. She always has been. I stopped the video. My hands were shaking now. Not from fear. Not anymore. From something else. Something colder. More focused. I opened another file. Bank records. Transfers. Amounts. Patterns. It was all there. Everything Daniel had said. Everything Clara had denied. Everything she thought she had hidden. He had seen it, recorded it, saved it, protected it, and somehow she hadn't found it because she hadn't looked here. She hadn't figured out the password, which meant this was what she had been searching for. This was what she thought she needed to destroy. My phone buzzed again. Another message. You think you're safe in that house? I didn't respond, didn't move, didn't even blink for a second. Then another message followed. I was there before you. A chill ran through me.
Slow.
Deliberate. Because suddenly, I wasn't just thinking about the past hour. I was thinking about timing, about how quickly she had gotten there, about how much she had already done. And a new thought surfaced, one I hadn't considered before. What if she hadn't finished? I stood up slowly, my eyes scanning the room again, but this time differently, not looking for what she took, looking for what she might have left behind. Something intentional, something hidden, something dangerous. My gaze moved to the bookshelf. Nothing obvious.
To the desk.
Already checked. To the walls. I froze.
There.
Near the corner. A small blacked, barely noticeable, too small to matter. Unless I stepped closer, my heart pounding louder now, each step slower than the last. And when I reached it, I knew.
Camera.
Tiny, almost invisible, pointed directly at the room. Watching, recording. My stomach dropped. She hadn't just been here. She was still here. Not physically, but enough. Enough to see. Enough to know. Enough to wait. A sudden, sharp clarity cut through everything. This wasn't over. Not even close. Clara hadn't been looking for evidence to protect herself. She had been trying to control it, destroy it, or, if she couldn't, use it. My grip tightened around the laptop, because now I understood something she didn't. She thought she was still ahead. She thought she was still in control. But she had missed one thing. One very important thing. Daniel didn't just prepare for her betrayal. He prepared for what came after. And now, so would I. For a long moment, I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at the tiny camera embedded so carefully into the corner of the wall that I had almost missed it. Almost. That was the word that kept echoing in my head. Almost safe. Almost in control. Almost ahead. Clara had built her entire life on that margin. on people missing things, overlooking details, doubting themselves just enough for her to stay one step ahead. But not this time. This time I saw it. And the moment I did, something inside me shifted completely. The fear didn't disappear. It changed. It sharpened, narrowed, focused into something useful. If she was watching, then she was expecting something. Panic, confusion, weakness.
She wanted to see me react.
She wanted to feel like she still had power over me. So I did the one thing she wouldn't expect. I turned my back to the camera, calmly, deliberately, as if I hadn't noticed it at all. Then I walked out of the office. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but my steps stayed even, controlled. Every movement now mattered. Every second was part of something larger. If she was watching, and I was certain she was, then this wasn't just about what I did. It was about what I let her believe. I moved through the house slowly, picking up a few scattered items, closing a drawer here, adjusting a chair there. Nothing rushed. Nothing frantic. Just enough to suggest I was overwhelmed, but not aware. Then I grabbed my bag, my phone, and headed toward the front door. I paused just long enough to glance back once. Not at the camera. At the room. At Daniel's office. At everything he had left behind. Then I walked out. And I didn't stop until I was back in my car. The second the door shut, I exhaled sharply, my hands gripping the steering wheel as the tension I had been holding in finally cracked open. But I didn't sit there long. I couldn't afford to freeze now. Not when I finally understood the situation clearly. Clara wasn't reacting anymore. She was acting, planning, watching.
And now, so was I.
I pulled out my phone and scrolled until I found the number I needed. He answered on the second ring.
Mia.
I need your help, I said immediately. A pause. Then his voice shifted, serious. What happened? She was in the house, I said. After the reading. She tore through everything. And she left something behind. What kind of something? I hesitated for half a second.
A camera.
Silence. Then, are you safe right now? Yes, I said. I left. But she's watching that house. Or, at least she was. Another pause, shorter this time. Don't go back alone, he said. I'm on my way. I ended the call and leaned back in the seat, staring out through the windshield without really seeing anything. The world outside kept moving, cars passing, people walking, normal life continuing like nothing had changed. But for me, everything had shifted into something else entirely. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. This wasn't about grief. This was about control. And Clara wasn't going to give that up easily. An hour later, I was back. But not alone. We entered the house together, moving carefully, quietly, as if the walls themselves might be listening. The difference this time was immediate. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was observing, noticing,
Calculating. Show me, he said.
I led him straight to the office, to the corner, to the camera. He stepped closer, studying it for only a second before nodding. Professional, he muttered. Not something you pick up casually. That's what I thought, I said. He reached up carefully, disabling it with practiced precision before removing it completely. If she installed this, he added, then she expected to come back. Or she wanted to see who found what. My eyes flicked toward the desk, toward the laptop. I already found what she was looking for, I said. That got his attention. I opened the laptop again, pulling up the folder, the files, the videos. He watched in silence as I showed him everything, each piece of evidence Daniel had collected, each record, each moment Clara thought was hidden. When I finished, he leaned back slightly, exhaling. This is more than enough, he said. For what? I asked. His expression didn't change. For everything. I understood what he meant. legal consequences, charges, exposure. But that wasn't the only option. And somehow, I knew Daniel wouldn't have wanted chaos. He had planned,
Carefully.
which meant there was a reason he left things this way. She thinks she's still ahead, I said quietly. He nodded once. Then let her. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time since this all began, I smiled. Not out of relief, not out of happiness, but because I finally understood the position we were in. She's going to come back, I said. Of course she is. And when she does, I let the thought hang for a second, then finished it. She's not going to find what she expects. We didn't remove everything. That was the key. We secured the files, backed them up, transferred copies somewhere safe, but we left just enough behind. Just enough disorder. Just enough illusion. The office still looked disturbed, still looked incomplete, still looked like something had been missed. Because it had. Just not in the way she thought. The camera was gone, but we left the spot untouched.
No patching, no covering.
If she came back, she would notice it immediately. And she would know that I knew, which meant the next move would be hers. As we finished, I stood in the center of the room, taking it all in one more time.
The desk.
The shelves. The scattered papers. Daniel's presence still lingered here, not in a way I could explain, but in the structure of everything he had left behind. He hadn't just protected me. He had prepared me for this. You ready? He asked. I nodded. But as we turned to leave, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Unknown number. I opened it slowly. You shouldn't have gone back. I didn't respond. Didn't react. But this time, I wasn't afraid. Because for the first time, I wasn't behind her anymore. And whatever Clara thought she was planning next, she had no idea. The trap was already closing. The strange thing about fear is that it doesn't always disappear when danger passes. It evolves. It becomes quieter, more controlled, less about panic and more about awareness. That's what I felt in the days after we set the trap. Not relief, not safety, just a sharp, steady understanding that something was coming, and this time I would be ready for it. I didn't return to the house immediately after that night. That was intentional. If Clara was still watching, if she still had any way of tracking movement or patterns, I didn't want to give her anything predictable. Instead, I stayed away just long enough to create uncertainty. Long enough for her to wonder what I had seen, what I had taken, what I knew. Because uncertainty is powerful. It makes people impatient. And impatience makes them careless. Exactly what I needed. 3 days passed. 3 long, quiet days where nothing happened on the surface, but everything beneath it tightened like a drawn wire. No new messages.
No sudden appearances. No obvious moves.
But I knew better. People like Clara didn't disappear. They recalculated. On the 4th night, just after midnight, my phone rang. I didn't need to check the number. I already knew. I let it ring once.
Twice.
Then I answered. You're getting bold, Clara's voice said, low and controlled, stripped of any softness she had once pretended to have. So are you, I replied. A brief silence followed. Not hesitation. Assessment. You went back to the house, she said. It wasn't a question. No, I said calmly. Another pause. You're lying. Am I? The smallest crack formed there, not in her words, but in the rhythm behind them. She wasn't sure anymore. That was new. That was important. You think you're clever, she said, her voice tightening slightly. But you don't understand what you've stepped into. I leaned back slightly, letting the silence stretch just enough to unsettle her. Then explain it to me, I said. That irritated her. I could hear it. You found something, she continued. I know you did. Maybe, I said. Another pause. Longer this time. You should give it back, she said finally. Whatever it is. That was it. Confirmation. Not just suspicion. Not just fear. She knew something was missing, and she needed it. Why? I asked quietly. For your own good. I almost smiled. There it is, I said.
What?
The concern, I replied. It doesn't suit you. Her breathing changed just slightly, but enough. You don't know who you're dealing with, Mia, she said, dropping all pretense now. No, I said.
Ido.
And for the first time since this started, she didn't interrupt, because she understood something in that moment. The balance had shifted. You should stop, she said after a few seconds, but the edge in her voice was gone now, replaced by something else.
Warning.
Not threat. You should have stopped a long time ago, I replied. Then I ended the call. I didn't go back to sleep. There was no point. Instead, I sat by the window, watching the sky slowly lighten, my thoughts steady, organized, clear in a way they hadn't been in weeks. Grief was still there, it would always be there, but it was no longer blinding me. It wasn't controlling my decisions. For the first time since Daniel died, I felt in control of my own life again. And that was something Clara had never expected. We chose the time carefully. Morning, daylight, no shadows to hide in, no silence to hide behind. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked exactly the same as it had days ago, calm, still, untouched. But I knew better, and I wasn't alone. This time, there were no secrets.
No hesitation.
Everything was already in motion. We entered together, straight to the office. And there, exactly where I expected, the room had been disturbed again. But not the same way. This time, it wasn't frantic. It was targeted. Drawers opened in specific places. Shelves shifted. The desk cleared more thoroughly. She had come back. And this time, she knew what she was looking for. She realized, I said quietly. Too late, came the reply beside me. I nodded once, because that was the truth. Everything she had tried to find, everything she had risked coming back for, was already gone, already secured, already beyond her reach, and more importantly, already documented. The confrontation didn't happen here. It happened where it mattered, where everything would end. She arrived late. Of course she did. Still trying to control the timing. Still trying to control the room. But the moment she stepped inside, she knew something was different. Her eyes moved quickly, taking everything in, counting.
Me.
Him. The folders. The silence. You set me up, she said. Not angry. Not loud. Just certain.
No. Irraplia.
You did that yourself.
Her gaze snapped to mine. Sharp.
Focused. Dangerous. For a second I saw it again, that version of her from the beginning. The one who believed she was untouchable. The one who believed she could outmaneuver anyone. But it didn't last. Because she saw something else too. Something she hadn't seen before.
Me.
Not grieving. Not broken. Not unsure.
Steady.
And that was what unsettled her the most. You think this ends here? She asked. Yes, I said. And I meant it. Not because she would accept it, not because she would agree, but because she didn't have a choice anymore. Everything she had hidden was no longer hidden. Everything she had denied was now undeniable. And everything she had planned had collapsed. You should have walked away, she said quietly. So should you, I replied. Silence filled the space again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It wasn't suffocating. It was final. Weeks later, the house felt different. Not just quieter, not just mine, but lighter. like something had been removed that I hadn't even realized was there. The tension, the shadow, the constant, invisible pressure.
Gone.
I moved slowly through each room, not to check anything, not to search, but just to exist there.
To feel it.
To understand that it was finally mine, not because of documents or decisions, but because I had claimed it. On my terms. In my way. Daniel's office was the last place I entered. I stood there for a long moment, looking at the desk, the shelves, the window where the light came in exactly the way he had designed it to. "You knew," I said quietly. And for the first time, that didn't hurt. It didn't break me. It didn't pull me back into grief. It grounded me, because he hadn't just seen the truth. He had trusted me to handle it, to finish what he couldn't. And I had. Not perfectly, not easily, but completely. I walked over to the desk and placed my hand on it briefly, letting the moment settle. Then I turned and walked out, not because I was leaving something behind, but because I wasn't trapped there anymore. Clara had once said I wouldn't survive this, that I would break, that I would lose everything. She was wrong. I didn't lose everything. I lost what I couldn't keep, and I kept what mattered, myself, and that was something she would never understand.